The morning sun broke over the hills of Ashtonville, a quiet American town where luxury rarely crossed paths with grease-stained garages. In a corner shop tucked behind a row of mom-and-pop diners, 23-year-old Evan worked alone. Orphaned at age 7, he'd grown up bouncing between foster homes, always keeping to himself, until he found solace in engines. The garage was his sanctuary, his tools his only companions. He had a gift, hands that could coax life out of dying. Machines. What he lacked in pedigree, he made up for in raw, intuitive skill that turned clunkers into polished masterpieces. That morning, Evan didn't expect anything different. He wiped down his wrenches and turned the open sign over like clockwork, but just an hour into the day, a hum echoed through the gravel lot, deeper than any truck or motorcycle. A matte black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided into the lot like a ship docking in the wrong harbor. Its presence was surreal. Most people in Ashtonville had only seen such cars in movies. Evan squinted, unsure whether to step forward or stay put. He settled on approaching cautiously, oil-smudged hands wiping instinctively against his jeans. The car door opened and a driver stepped out, tall, stiff, clearly not used to being in such a modest place. He walked around to the passenger side and opened the door. Out stepped a woman in her late 50s, dressed in an immaculate white pantsuit, sunglasses, and a demeanor that silenced everything around her. "This is the place?" she asked flatly. The driver nodded. She glanced at Evan. "You're the one they say can fix anything?" Evan nodded, unsure how to respond. She offered no introduction, just a simple command. "The roles won't shift. Can you fix it?" He nodded again, stunned but determined. She handed him the keys like she was handing over her reputation. "I'll be back tomorrow. Impress me." Then she left, vanishing with the same grace she arrived. Evan stood alone, staring at a machine worth more than every car he'd ever fixed combined. He popped the hood with reverence, whispering to himself, "Don't screw this up." He'd never worked on a Rolls-Royce, but engines spoke a universal language. He studied every inch, tracing the problem to a rare gearbox malfunction. It was serious, but not impossible. By dusk, Evan had pulled apart the transmission housing and found the corrupted part. It wasn't available locally. Most mechanics would have stopped there, but Evan designed a workaround using components from an abandoned Bentley motor and a few modifications of his own. It took all night, but by sunrise the car not only shifted, it purred. Exhausted, but proud, he detailed every inch, wiping it until it gleamed like onyx under the morning sun. When the billionaire returned later that day, her stilettos clicked sharply across the concrete floor as she inspected the scene. She raised an eyebrow. "It runs," Evan handed her the keys, "better than it did yesterday." She slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. Her jaw tightened in surprise. She shifted once, then twice, then reversed. Smooth. No hesitation. She parked and got out, looking him up and down. "You're not ASE certified." Evan shook his head. "No, ma'am. You didn't train at any European school." "No, ma'am." She folded her arms. "So how did you do what 3 certified Rolls-Royce technicians couldn't?" Evan smiled faintly. "I listened. Machines talk if you let them." For the first time, her mouth curved into a small smile. "My name's Elizabeth Monroe, CEO of Monroe Technologies." That name sent a chill down Evan's spine. Everyone had heard of her. AI, aerospace, tech conglomerates. She extended a hand. He hesitated, then shook it. "You ever think about doing more with your life than turning wrenches in a forgotten town?" she asked. Evan's eyes flickered with something deep. "I've thought about it, just never got the chance." Elizabeth nodded. "I may have something in mind." Then she glanced back at the car. "And I owe you dinner." That night he found himself seated across from her in the most expensive restaurant in Ashtonville, one he never thought he'd step foot in. She asked about his background, his upbringing, his lack of formal education. Evan answered honestly. She seemed fascinated, especially by how he taught himself through old manuals, YouTube videos, and trial and error. "What drives you?" she asked. "Fixing what?" "People say can't be fixed," he said without hesitation. That answer hit her harder than he realized. She looked away, clearly, thinking of someone or something he couldn't yet see. As the meal ended, Elizabeth made an unexpected offer. "Come work for me, not just as a mechanic. I want you in my innovation garage. You'll be fixing prototypes, rethinking engineering. Problems my team can't." Evan choked on his water. "You're serious?" "Very," he hesitated. "I don't have the credentials." She leaned in. "That's exactly why I want you. You think like no one else. You fix what they give up on." Evan's head spun. "I need to think." "Sleep on it," she said. "The offer stands. With one condition: you let my daughter meet you." The next day, Evan arrived at the Monroe estate. The gates opened to a mansion nestled in hills that overlooked the entire valley. But it wasn't the size that shocked him. It was the soul in the design. Everything was handcrafted, detailed, precise, just like the car he'd fixed. Elizabeth greeted him warmly and led him through glass corridors until they arrived at a sunroom. There, seated in a wheelchair, was a girl with strawberry blonde hair, sketching quietly. "Lena, this is Evan." The girl looked up and smiled. "So, you're the mechanic who saved my mom's favorite car." Evan blushed. Guilty. Lena rolled closer, the wheels smooth on the marble floor. "You must be good if she brought you here." "I just did my best." She extended a hand and he shook it gently. Something passed between them. Not romantic, not yet, but real. She asked about the fix, about his life, about his dream car. She laughed at his jokes and teased her mother playfully. Elizabeth watched them from a distance, heart warming. Her daughter hadn't smiled this much in months. Lena had been through, more than most, paralysis from a rare spinal condition. Over the following weeks, Evan became a regular at Monroe Tech's prototype lab. He stunned engineers with his quick thinking, fixes and mechanical hacks. Lena often sat nearby, sketching new ideas, many of which inspired Evan's projects. They grew closer, not in the way of fairy tales, but with shared silences, thoughtful exchanges, and mutual admiration. One night, after showing Lena how he modified an exoskeleton joint, she whispered, "You don't just fix machines, Evan, you fix what's broken in people too." He looked at her, eyes wide. She was serious. He felt seen for the first time ever. Evan began spending more time at the Monroe estate, invited not just by Elizabeth, but by Lena herself. He restored a vintage motorcycle for her. She designed custom grips. He rewired her wheelchair's propulsion system for speed. She dared him to race her down the garden ramp. He let her win. One afternoon, as the sun set behind the hills, Lena handed him a small envelope. Inside was a sketch she'd made of him, a pencil drawing of Evan with a wrench in hand, standing in front of the Rolls-Royce. Below it she'd written, "The one who repairs more than engines." Weeks turned into months, and Evan's world shifted in ways he never imagined. He wasn't just the town's orphan mechanic anymore. He was now at the heart of cutting-edge innovation. Yet despite the rapid change, his humility never faded. Each morning he arrived early, greeted the staff with quiet respect, and threw himself into his work with passion. Lena's presence became a constant source of joy. They laughed over shared lunches, debated wild mechanical theories, and found comfort in each other's company. Elizabeth noticed how her daughter's eyes lit up differently when Evan entered the room. Something deeper was unfolding. One evening, while working late on a custom suspension project, Evan noticed Lena wheeling into the lab with a box in her lap. She placed it on the table. "Open it," she said. Inside was a set of handcrafted tools engraved with his initials. "You deserve more than borrowed wrenches." Evan blinked, overwhelmed. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she cut in softly. That moment felt different. not like a gift between colleagues, but between souls who understood each other's pain and potential. She looked at him as though she saw the man he hadn't yet dared to become. The next day, Monroe Technologies held a private event for industry leaders to showcase breakthroughs in mobility and AI-assisted design. Elizabeth insisted Evan present the modified joint system he and Lena had co-developed. Nervous but resolute, Evan stood before engineers, CEOs, and reporters in his black button-down, hands trembling slightly. But once he spoke, the room quieted. He didn't use buzzwords, polished pitches. He spoke plainly from the heart, about design through empathy, failure as fuel, and his belief that broken doesn't mean useless. When he finished, the room erupted into applause. Lena wheeled up beside him and grinned. "Told you." Later that night, Elizabeth found Evan sitting alone on the estate's balcony, looking out over the garden. "You were incredible today," she said. "Thanks," he replied quietly. "Feels surreal." She studied him for a moment. "You've changed this house, Evan, and not just with machines." He turned to her, curious. Lena smiles more now, laughs. She believes in things again. "That's you." He shifted, uncomfortably. "She's special," Elizabeth nodded. "She is. So are you." Then she paused. "Evan, what if I told you I could see you as part of this family, officially?" He blinked, unsure he heard correctly. "You mean—" "Yes," she interrupted gently. "You've earned my respect, but more importantly, you've earned her heart. I see the way you look at each other. And while I've built empires, nothing means more to me than my daughter's happiness. If you feel the same, I won't stand in the way." Evan felt the air leave his lungs. A boy once abandoned, overlooked, barely noticed, was now being invited into a world of belonging. "I do care about her deeply," he whispered. Elizabeth smiled. "Then don't waste time." She placed a small velvet box on the table and left him alone. Evan didn't open the box right away. He stared at it for hours, thoughts racing. Who was he to deserve this? Could love really cross such distance? Class, pain, background? But when he thought of Lena, her laugh, her fire, her belief in him, doubt gave way to something powerful. Faith. The next day, he waited for her by the rose arch she adored. She rolled up, surprised to see him in a suit. "What's the occasion?" He knelt, heart pounding, and opened the box to reveal a modest but stunning ring. "The occasion is you. Will you marry me, Lena?" Tears filled her eyes. "Yes, yes, Evan. 1,000 times yes." They hugged tightly, joy radiating in waves neither had felt in years. Staff peered out windows, cheering quietly. Elizabeth watched from the balcony, wiping a tear. What started as a mechanic fixing a car had become the repair of something far greater, a future, a family, a promise. News spread quickly. Some were stunned, others skeptical, but those who truly knew Evan and Lena saw the bond, the truth, the earned love. The wedding was planned for spring, to be held in the Monroe garden under blooming cherry blossoms. On their wedding day, the sky was clear, the air warm, and every seat was filled with those who had witnessed their journey. Evan stood at the altar in a tailored suit, nervous but proud. Lena, radiant in a custom-designed gown that flowed elegantly over her wheelchair, was escorted by her mother. As they met eyes, the crowd disappeared. They exchanged vows filled with truth about broken beginnings, restored hopes, and love born not from wealth but from resilience. When the ceremony ended, cheers erupted. Evan leaned down and kissed her gently, the orphan and the heiress now bound forever. The reception was a blend of elegance and raw joy. Evan danced clumsily, Lena laughed uncontrollably, and Elizabeth smiled wider than she had in years. Reporters snapped photos, but the couple ignored the flash. It wasn't about headlines, it was about healing. Lena gave a toast midway through. "He didn't just fix a car, he fixed my smile, my spirit, and my dreams, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure he knows he's never alone again. The crowd rose in applause, many in tears. Evan couldn't speak. He just held her hand and kissed it gratefully. Their honeymoon was quiet. Just the two of them in a lakeside cabin in Vermont. No assistants, no labs, no suits. Just long walks, late-night talks, and memories made with laughter. Evan built a ramp with his own hands. Lena painted a mural of their story. On their final night, they watched fireflies from the porch. "You think fate brought us together?" she asked softly. Evan thought for a moment. "No, I think broken roads did. And maybe that's even more powerful." She leaned against him. "Then I'm grateful for every bump along the way." "Me too," he whispered. They returned not just as husband and wife, but as partners in every sense. Evan was promoted to director of mechanical innovation. Lena began designing inclusive mobility systems. Together they launched a foundation that trained underprivileged youth in mechanical trades, giving others like Evan a shot at rebuilding their lives. Their story became a beacon, not because of luxury or status, but because it showed the world that greatness could rise from garages and love could bloom between seemingly opposite worlds. Elizabeth proudly watched their impact grow. No longer just a CEO, but a mother fulfilled beyond boardrooms. Years passed. Evan and Lena remained inseparable. Their love deepened with time, shaped by challenges and victories alike. They renovated a local community center, transformed it into a tech meets mechanics hub, and called it The Fix. It welcomed those who'd been cast aside, orphans, dropouts, disabled teens, and gave them tools, training, and belief. On the wall was a plaque with Lena's sketch of Evan, the same one she gave him long ago. Below it read, "Fix what they gave up on." Every morning, Evan would walk in, touch the plaque gently, and whisper, "Still fixing, Lena." One evening, after a long mentoring session, Evan returned home to find Lena waiting by the fire, a scrapbook in her lap. "Remember this?" she asked, pointing to a photo of the old Rolls-Royce. "Hard to forget," he laughed. "That car changed everything." She nodded. "Or maybe you changed everything." He wrapped his arm around her. "No, we did, together." The flames flickered warmly as they reminisced about each chapter, from broken parts to building dreams. They didn't need fairy tales. Their story, real and raw, was far better. It was theirs, forged in faith, grit, and second chances. One day, a teenage boy walked into The Fix, eyes heavy with fear. Evan recognized that look. It was the same one he wore years ago. "I heard you fix engines," the boy said. Evan smiled. "I fix people too." He handed him a wrench. "Let's start here." Lena, watching from the doorway, knew. Their story was repeating in the most beautiful way. It had come full circle, and as Evan helped the boy turn his first bolt, he whispered the same words he once told himself under a flickering garage light. "You're not broken, you're just not done yet."